Okay, so next one is the anomalous secondary growth in Bignonia. So the secondary growth in the Bignonia stem, it is not typical of that found in the dicotyledonous. So here in this, generally in Bignonia, it is also belongs to dicotyledonous. So here, generally this Bignonia, in Bignonia, so normally it produces secondary tissue normally during the starting, it produces normally. That is in this plant, the cambium is normal in position and it produces normally first, but later it behaves abnormally. Okay, so in this plant, the cambium is normal in position, and but here the abnormal activity is seen later. First it produces normally, producing the secondary xylem towards inner side and secondary phloem towards outside. So in some plants like Bignonia and other members of the family Bignoniaceae, so this cambium is normal in position and the activity for the first time, but immediately it cuts off different proportions of the xylem and phloem at 4 alternative points in the form of cross. Okay, so first it behaves this Bignonia cambium, which behaves normally only. And it produces secondary xylem towards inner side and secondary phloem towards outside. But after some time, so this cambium which behaves abnormally. So the cambium which produces secondary xylem and secondary phloem in variable quantities. So some segments, much greater amount of xylem is seen than the phloem, and in others more phloem than the xylem. So as a result, it is a characteristic structure is formed with the ridges and furrowed xylem cylinder. So when we observe the Bignonia stem, so it shows ridges and furrows. Bignonia stem which shows ridges and furrows like this. Okay, ridges and furrows. So at some places it contains more amount of xylem, and some places more amount of phloem is present. So it produces more amount of phloem towards outside and less amount of phloem to xylem towards inside. So due to which it shows ridges and furrows. So the ridges are wider than the grooves. So in the secondary phloem, which is formed in grooves, and parallel strips of bashed fibers are formed. So in this region, in the grooves, that is bashed fibers are formed. So the cambium breaks up into number of strips here. This cambium will, so what happens? So due to irregular activity, so this cambium will break into small number of strips. So the wider ones remain on the top of the ridges and narrower ones remain at the base of the grooves. So the cambium ring, it behaves abnormally. So due to which, so here the forces will, due to forces, so this cambium also break into small different number of strips. So the wider one remain on the top of the ridge and narrower one remains at the base of the groove. So the number of wedges formed is usually 4 in number and symmetrically arranged corresponding in position to the larger primary vascular bundle. So this kind of adaptive anomaly, which is exists in the Bignonia because of its habitat is woody climber. So it is a adaptive anomaly. So this anomalous secondary growth, which is useful to this plant, because due to presence of these sclerenchymatous patches which are present in this region, furrow region, so they helps in the when the this is a Bignonia, it is a woody climber. So due to heavy winds, so due to presence of this sclerenchyma, it is due to presence of this anomalous secondary growth, which is useful to the plant. They can escaping from this breakage due to presence of this sclerenchymatous patches. So, Bignonia is a dicot woody climber belonging to the family Bignoniaceae. So, anomalous secondary growth is due to the abnormal behavior of the cambium during the later stages. Okay, earlier it is normal only, but later it behaves abnormally. So, the origin, position, and function of the cambium ring is normal in the initial stages of the growth. In the initial stages, this cambium, which produces large amount of secondary xylem towards the inner side and small amount of secondary phloem towards the outside. So after producing some secondary tissue in the normal manner, the 4 regions in the crosswise places, the cambium which produces more amount of secondary phloem towards the outer side and less amount of secondary xylem towards the inner side. Okay, only at the 4 regions only it producing more amount of secondary phloem and less amount of secondary xylem. So these phloem patches later on get embedded or intruded deeply into the secondary xylem. So this result in the formation of 4 deep wedges of secondary phloem. So at these 4 places, the less amount of secondary xylem and more amount of phloem is produced. Secondary phloem is produced. So this is the abnormal behavior of the cambium. This is restricted only to 4 regions only. So only the 4 corners only producing more amount. So the phloem patch is traversed by the sclerenchyma bars. So this sclerenchyma gives mechanical support to the thin-walled phloem tissue. So it results in 4 wedge-shaped phloem patches and 4 fan-shaped xylem patches. So after the addition of secondary xylem and phloem, the development of the periderm takes place in the epidermal region, that is extrastellar region. So here the formation of periderm will take place and shaped xylem patch, so after the addition of secondary xylem and phloem, the development of the periderm. So it is the extrastellar origin. So why Bignonia shows this kind of activity means it is a climber. So when the stem grows around the support, its inner side gets compressed and outer side gets stretched. So if the only hard tissue like the secondary xylem remains in the central part of the stem during the compression and stretching, so the stem would break or crack. So to avoid the breaking or cracking of the stem, so it requires some soft tissue in the central region. So the central hard tissue is traversed by 4 phloem patches. That is soft tissue at the 4 diagonal places. So due to which it cannot easily break. So this is due to the abnormal behavior of the cambium. So this is a direct relation between the anomalous secondary growth and the climbing habit of the plant. Hence, this anomalous secondary growth in the Bignonia stem is described as the adaptive anomalous secondary growth. So due to presence of this anomalous secondary growth, so it is helpful to the plant. It cannot break easily due to presence of this phloem. So this is the Bignonia stem. So it only at the 4 regions. So these are the phloem wedges. So this one is the primary xylem and this one is the secondary xylem here. So less amount of secondary xylem. So here the sclerenchyma patches, starch sheath in the endodermal region. So this is the Bignonia stem. So this one. So at the 4 regions only it producing more amount of secondary phloem and less amount of secondary xylem. So it is adaptive. So this is about the anomalous secondary growth in Bignonia. Okay. So I will stop here. In next class, we will continue. So we will discuss Borrehavia, Acheranthus, Dracaena in next class. Any doubts?
Naina, Unuswami, if you have any doubt, please ask our respected madam. Otherwise, I will going to wind up the session. Madam, thank you very much. So, it is most important topic in all competitive exams. Anomalous secondary growth. Without anomalous secondary growth, there is no question paper. Minimum 2 questions has come from this anomalous secondary growth topic, even though the secondary growth topic also. So, thank you very much, madam. So, tomorrow we will meet at same time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.